Reimagining Success, episode 258. You're listening to the Reimagining Success podcast, where we help you design a business and a life that allows you freedom from the 9 to 5. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, ex-corporate good girl, now a business mentor and coach, author, mum of 2, and I'm here to help you create more freedom, flexibility and fulfillment. Now let's get started with redefining success outside of the 9 to 5. Hey, we are back and it's October and it is my birthday week, which is very exciting. I say that skeptically because I'm actually recording this far sooner. I mean, way back. So it's not actually my birthday week, but that means it's coming soon, which is very exciting. It's also the anniversary, 5-year anniversary. Cannot quite believe that it's 5 years since I published my first book in this space, which was Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5. So I'd love for you, of course, if you haven't got a copy, or perhaps you've got a friend who'd like it, to celebrate this week with me. My birthday is not an important one, sadly, but an important anniversary for the book, Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5, on Amazon and hopefully in your local bookstore as well. So do let me know if you can't find it there. It should now be available. I might just start leaving some copies in random bookstores and just donate them to the stores, maybe at the airport and so, just leave them around. So if you ever see one, then pick it up and grab it. But Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5, and of course my newer book that came out last year, Outside of the 9 to 5. It's 5 years since the first book came out. It's a collection of stories of people who left their corporate jobs they did 5 things, right? Just to recap quickly. One was they changed sector. So, for example, moving from corporate into the charity sector. Another group created a portfolio career, which, I love, which is having sort of different strings to your bow, different projects, different businesses. Still another went freelance. Another group started a business, and finally a big group, which actually included me originally, just took the leap of faith and without knowing what it would lead to, which is very exciting. So Leaving the Corporate 9 to 5, 5-year anniversary this week. Tomorrow, I believe, if you're listening to this live, and tomorrow is also my birthday. So today, we're continuing the series of Think Like an Entrepreneur. And I've recorded quite a few episodes, so I need to cough now. I'm going to pause and I'll be back in a second. That's what happens when you batch record podcasts. But there you go. We're talking about adaptability today, and it's such an important, perhaps the most important character trait for entrepreneurs. I'd argue for pretty much anyone in business, in leadership, and in fact in life. There you go. It's a bold statement today. But the only constant is change, as the saying goes. The world is more uncertain and ambiguous than ever. It's hard to make decisions in that context, but we need to. We need to respond flexibly to when things change, not take things personally, not get all moany and groany and playing the blame game, and so on. Need to be positive and resilient, right? So adaptability, flexibility, agility, whatever you want to call it, is such an important trait, whatever our role in life, I would argue. So, we tend to resist change, right? I think most of us, certainly. I always refer to my poor mum, who would have had still a fax machine if she could, and the old analog phone. What's it called? I don't even know what it's called. The analog film camera, and just likes to go back to the same holiday place, the same hotel, and all that's fine. But the problem is, and that's really important, self-awareness, right? And you can design your life around that. However, unfortunately, we can't control for every circumstance. And again, the only constant is change. We're bound to be at some point, our stable ground is going to be shook, as it were. And then we need to be able to respond effectively to that. So if you are too resistant to change, then, if you're not adaptable at all, as with some of the other things we've been talking about, you can end up stagnating and becoming irrelevant, actually, both in your individual career and in any business ventures. Again, I mentioned these last week, I think, but the kind of Kodaks, Blockbusters, Blackberries of the world, they just didn't adapt and they lost their competitive edge. They couldn't disrupt themselves. The same thing happens, of course, if you have a career where you're becoming obsolete, effectively, when in publishing, in design and so on, when digital came along, if you were only working still on print and didn't embrace an upskill in digital, that was a huge limitation for where you could go. And obviously, especially difficult if you're sort of nearing retirement age, then you perhaps don't have the time or inclination to retrain And that can be quite tough. So now with AI, of course, coming as well, that's something to bear in mind, and we can become like those big famous examples of companies, irrelevant if we don't adapt to change. If we just kind of put our head in the sand, that's not going to be great for our future career prospects. Again, because of that, if we have that fixed mindset, effectively, is what we're talking about as well, we can miss out on opportunities, right? So if we're resisting change, yeah, we can hold on for as long as possible, but ultimately we'll be swept up in the winds of change, and we will have missed out then, and we'll be far behind where we could have been if only we'd kind of taken that leap a little sooner. So again, it takes courage, right? It takes a growth mindset, it takes courage, and we would have had the opportunity to grow and expand in that time that we were kind of fighting it. So, you know, if we're fighting a losing battle, actually it's smarter to give up sooner, I suppose, and to admit the fact that we need to change something, rather than hang on for dear life until it's too late. And it can make us really rigid in our decision making. Nope, we've always done it that way. Nope, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. But, you know, and we just kind of cling to those outdated strategies and things. And there's, of course, a reason, right? There's just like there's a reason for staying in our comfort zone. There are probably good reasons for holding on to the way we've done things. And it's also quite difficult, let's be honest, to know when it's time to let go and completely disrupt. That takes a lot of courage again, right? So all of these different traits of thinking like an entrepreneur all interlinked. But ultimately, that's where, you know, we become irrelevant, whether as an individual, as a company, we're going to be stagnating, missing those opportunities, and hinder progress effectively. On the other hand, if we can be more adaptable, agile, and flexible, we can navigate those changing business landscapes, right? We can pivot our strategies in response to market shifts. We can upskill where we realize, oops, I don't know how to do that yet. Let's quickly, try to learn that, or let's work with a coach to develop this particular skill, or whatever it is, to kind of work on that blind spot. You know, being more adaptable means that we kind of accept the things we can't change, and instead we focus our energy on finding a solution, finding what's often going to be an innovative solution to address that challenge, rather than, oh, this is so unfair, I can't believe it, it's so hard. And I'm not, trivializing this, because it can be really hard. It is really hard, but we waste so much time and energy on being angry and frustrated, rather than go, oh, this has happened now, suck it up. Scream a bit, cry a bit by all means, but then move on and go, okay, right, so what can we do? I did a training on this kind of topic, and often share the example of one of my first work projects where I developed, and I was so passionate about the concepts. I think it happened twice. So I finally learned the lesson when I was first starting out as an assistant brand manager. And the general manager, whoever it was, would just say, oh no, we don't do black in this category. Okay. Or no, we don't like the animal. Okay. So we've done all this research, creative work with the agency. We're so passionate and intrinsically motivated about these things. And yet, a senior, experienced, expert person says no. And, as kind of an impetuous child, I hate when things are illogical and people just say no. I like to kind of push and go, no, why? And I like to try to persuade them, but that doesn't always work. And we have to go, okay, that's frustrating. But take the emotion out of it, right? Accept that this has happened. They have every right to, as a more experienced expert leader of this brand, to make that decision. And I now have to focus on, okay, how can we regroup, salvage what we have, and find a way not to delay this project and still deliver on time for the launch in a way that's going to work for everybody, right? And that's what we need to shift to, rather than, oh, it's so frustrating, so unfair, I've done all this work, it's not fair. So being more agile, being adaptable, finding solutions, that's so necessary, and always has been, and only becomes more important. And obviously, to continue to be relevant to the market as the market chops and changes, we need to embrace that change. We need to stay in tune with customer needs and preferences, right? That's sort of marketing 101, business 101 from back in my corporate days as well. So whether it's the generational shifts of Gen Z coming up and having different interests, obviously the millennials used to be the folk that were so difficult to appease. Now it's the next generation, understanding those different needs and different media, different formats, different platforms, understanding the sort of socioeconomic things that are happening, things in diversity. We talked about psychological safety last week, etc., etc. That's, these are things that we need to be sensitive to and respond to, and being adaptable and listening, being open to these things, being empathetic and so on are such crucial traits to have. So, okay, if you know that you're a little bit rigid, maybe like I used to be, maybe I'm still like that, who knows? I certainly try not to be, maybe a bit like my mum who prefers, to do what you've always done. Or at least you know what you like, which, that's fair enough, I think, too. But, embracing lifelong learning is one of those things I just think we have to do. I'm such an advocate for staying up to date. It's not about industry trends so much for me. It's more about reading, listening to podcasts, just being interested, just being curious, talking to people. There's, when we're making decisions, I think in our business, there's the initial stage, at least, is opening up and just exploring, trying not to filter too soon and just being sort of expansive and exploring and listening and learning. Then yes, we need to narrow down and filter for feasibility in order to make the decision. But start off, always be open to learning, hearing different perspectives, reading and seeing what's going on. We definitely need to be open to feedback, right? It's so easy to, again, say, oh, it's not fair. Like, who are they to say this, that, and the other? But try to look for even the tiniest nugget of relevant feedback. What could I do differently? If you hear something from someone, how dare they criticize my amazing thing that I've done? But really look for, okay, what is there in there that I could take as constructive criticism, and then, make informed adjustments to the strategies that I'm following. And within this adaptability topic, again, we come back to courage and experimenting and taking risks, getting out of your comfort zone, testing new approaches. In a corporate environment especially, there's a lot of talk about, we embrace failure and mistakes and so on. And that's not always the case in reality and the culture. And likewise, I certainly don't have that. I can take little risks in my business because partly I have the foundation, partly it's just me that I'm accountable to, right? Yes, I have to support my whole family and so on, contribute, but generally I don't have a boss who'll get angry at me. I'm not disappointing shareholders. I don't have the board. I don't have, the everything else, the whole corporate shebang. So I can take a few more risks, but generally we're actually much more risk averse than we perhaps want to and need to be. So we're not talking about taking crazy, ridiculous risks, that whole ask for forgiveness rather than permission. I don't quite align with that. And I totally respect you if you're in corporate not wanting to rip everything up and risk your whole career. And yet within that framework, there is an opportunity to experiment, to try some little pilots, see how things go. That's really the mindset of an entrepreneur. Some little mini projects that aren't going to risk the whole business. You try that out over here, you go where the energy is in the teams, you give it a go. And then when it's working, you can test it more comprehensively, you can roll it out. But that's really powerful to try these smaller little projects, test and experiment, and then you can go from there. So that's adaptability today. I'd love to hear from you where you feel you stand on the scale of adaptability. Are you super flexible to the point of maybe being too adaptable to the winds of change and not having enough conviction and direction in terms of the guiding North Star that you're following? Or are you at the other end of the spectrum where you're like, oh, no, I've got this. I've decided this is what I'm doing. Stop interfering with me. Stop changing things. It's pretty frustrating. I think most of us are somewhere in the middle there, right? But we can certainly work on being more adaptable, more flexible and accepting that change is going to happen. So how can we be resilient to that, and how can we make good decisions in that context? So that's adaptability today. We are talking growth mindset next week. So super important, coming from Carol Dweck's originally, growth mindset versus fixed mindset, but really this bigger topic of lifelong learning and how important that is in your work, again, whether you're an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, or something else entirely. I will see you then. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Reimagining Success with Anna Lundberg. I'm sure you know someone, a friend, a colleague, who could also benefit from this podcast. I'd love for you to share the podcast or maybe your favourite episode with them so that they can listen too. Thank you so much for your support.